Have you hired an associate before and they didn't work out? Like you would love to be hiring an associate soon, or maybe you have hired one and you would love them to be more ramped up faster and be in be humming smoothly humming along in the practice and really helping you see more patients and bring in more money into the practice. So we're going to be getting into 3 keys to successful onboarding of an associate today. And this is Chen Yan, your 6 and 7 figure practice makeover mentor at introvertedvisionary.com, where we help visionary holistic health practitioners with growing successful multi 6 and 7 figure practices the introverted way. And I'm your host of your ChiroSecure show today. So let's talk about the successful onboarding of a new associate that can really support your practice and where you don't feel like you need to be micromanaging them as much, or where you don't feel like you need to um, like look over their shoulders, or where instead that they actually are doing well as quickly as possible. So there are 3 phases of onboarding that are helpful to know about and keep in mind as you onboard a new associate. I would say a common mistake a lot of chiropractors have and other holistic health practitioners have with this is to just mainly think of, okay, it's essentially now somebody's hired, and then I'm just going to train them, get them started, and then that's mainly about it. Whereas if we look at onboarding instead as more of a 3 phase of thing to think about, then you're actually going to put things in place that will be more supportive for a new associate, because the most challenging thing for a new associate is being thrown in to a new environment, and then whether it's expected to start seeing patients, or even sometimes expected to be bringing in some patients too, and then also be on the same page clinically, and also how they communicate. Have you ever had associates before, or you've heard of these stories of how associates didn't work out because it was like they weren't actually, like, all these people tend to are asking for you, like they still want to see you. They don't necessarily get all jump up and down to be seeing your associate. So then your associate isn't that busy, and then they start feeling like I'm twiddling my thumbs, and then they start feeling like, well, maybe I need to find another job, or something. So understanding these 3 phases will really help. So the first phase is before day one. So this is where, even before they start, but once you have them hired, what are you doing? So what types of things to be considering here would be, are you already starting to um, get them on board with the culture of your practice more? So even before day one, are they starting to understand that more? Are they getting excited about it more? Can they actually share, like, even on the first week in the practice, can they actually share what your vision is, or your mission is for their practice? And that might sound really boring to you. Maybe you might even think I haven't thought about what my mission or vision is for a while, because that just sounds like textbook kind of stuff to think about. But it is, what is it, right, what do you stand for with your practice? Is that something that an associate could clearly communicate as far as the differentiating factor of your practice to other people? So these are some of the things to start thinking about. Also, what if you had things moving in the direction of where the associate is able to get busy sooner rather than later? Because one of the biggest challenges that I hear from docs, chiropractors, and other holistic health practitioners is that we're in hiring somebody and then they aren't busy, and then now you have the added overhead, but then your associate's not at capacity quickly enough, and so it could affect uh, your bandwidth and cash flow. But whereas instead, if you got them busier sooner, that means that more patients are helped. That means more money is coming in the door without you having to be seeing patients yourself. So then what can you do even before they start to be on the road to that? So we have like a checklist. We have a pre-day one, and then also 90-day checklist onboarding that we end up um, giving our clients when they work with us on this. And the in our introverted visionaries, 6 and 7 figure systems. And there, one of the things about it is that have you thought about having them write up whether it's their bio, or do a video of themselves, and like introducing themselves to the practice, what they're passionate about, and what kinds of areas of focus they might help with treating, and then and also, is that shared with your patient base even before they start on day one? I mean, certainly after they're hired, but before they start on day one. And so this way, and are you also talking about it within the practice too, so that people are starting to get excited about this new person you have versus later on, and where you don't have as much time once they're already started. Right. So what are the things that you're doing before day one? And I just shared with you a couple of things on that checklist that you could start with already right away. Now, what about then the next phase is the first 90 days. So the first 90 days are so important when onboarding a new associate, because they are getting used to the environment. They are learning a lot. They are also sussing out what it's like to work there, and they will also pick up on different kinds of things that the practice or you typically do culture wise, whether you say it or you don't. Right. So what kinds of things do you have in place in the first 90 days that support their success? I know when I first hired my first person, I I just thought they would know stuff, and then I didn't really have good things prepared for training, right? And so what ended up happening was that it was a bit of a flop. I learned along the way. Oh, I guess I need to be more organized with what I train them on, and having what are the milestones. Like, what is one thing that you can consider is, well, what are the milestones uh, each month for the first 90 days? What are the milestones each week? By the end of each week, they will have had been able to do XYZ. Do you have that clearly laid out? And then how are you communicating with each other? So many times, especially if you have a busy practice and you're busy seeing patients, maybe you already have a pretty full load, it can be the easiest thing to have training with your associate and communication with your associate fall to the wayside because you're so busy and you feel like you don't have time. So, but the challenge of that is that if you end up not paying attention to these things early on, then there's more possibility for things falling through the cracks, and then you're actually needing to take care of them anyway, and when stuff goes wrong. Whereas if you were more proactive in how you're communicating with your new hire, for example, what's the rhythm? So there are rhythms of both, with the training and learning side of things, and then like your communication with your new hire on that. There's also rhythm of like them being able to have that time with you to discuss their progress. And also, do you have certain things that they understand to be a good measure of their success? Sometimes it can be easy to think that, well, of course they would know what the measure of success is to see more patients or to bring more patients in. But have you actually defined that? How many how many referrals could they be involved with inspiring a week? Or meaning that, like, are they asking for referrals, for example, if you do feel like that's something you would like your associate to be doing? Or if you do feel like it's important for your associate to retain patients, then what do you feel is reasonable? how many visits before people drop off care do you feel is reasonable for them to be at least an average of, so that it's acceptable to you in with your standards within the practice, and where people don't just disappear and then they don't really get fully taken care of with their treatments. And so are you clear with what you would like either the minimum to be, or and then do they have a good way of reporting that back to you and tracking it, for example, or have you having someone on your team, your staff tracking it, but then you get these updates and then you also go over it with your associate too. So having those things in place can be really helpful. And then in the first 90 days, definitely helping your new associate um, get situated more with the culture and the environment, and then the relationships with the people who work there, whether it's you or with other people on your staff, is really key as well. And then because the and then the third phase of onboarding is after 90 days. So typically the most time spent with an associate for really a way to onboard an associate well, and to where you are able to um, get them off to a good start, and which they're also it'll help increase the likelihood of retention too of your associates, so that they don't end up leaving and having turnover, is their satisfaction, right, with how much of a contribution they're making and how they're getting things. And we're actually going to talk a little bit about the like 3 keys to success that are really important. So I talked about 3 phases of onboarding, and we'll be talking about 3 keys to success coming up. One thing I do want to mention about the after the 90 days is that many times it's common to then feel like, oh, good, I've got my associate trained to a point where they can be more off on their own, and then you get busy, and then only if stuff comes up that you aren't happy about, then you end up having something to say to your associates, right? But you might not actually have um, an ongoing rhythm of communication. Like, do you have an ongoing rhythm of communication? Do you with them? And do you also have certain things that you are continuing to train them on or help them with um, after the first 90 days? For example, I would say one of the biggest complaints I hear from chiropractors and other holistic health practitioners when they hire an associate is that they are like feeling like the associate may not be retaining patients as well, or maybe there's something going on with the communication, and that the practice owner is feeling like they are still better than the associate with things like that, with retention or with communication, and then feeling kind of frustrated about it, right? So how and also with attracting new patients for the practices that are expecting their associate to be attracting new patients also. And so then what do you have in place after the 90 days that is doable for you? Everything doesn't have to be done by you, but it's still helpful for you to have some involvement with your associate to really support them through success and their happiness in working there. So let's talk about the 3 keys to um, 3 key areas of success. So there are 3 key areas to success in onboarding your associate, and the first area has to do with the people feeling connected. And by the way, the reason this is important and why we're talking about it is that there could be up to, so there's some studies done on this, there could be up to 20% turnover in the first 45 days, and up to 50% turnover in the first 18 months. If you think about that, like when there's turnover, what does that mean for you? That means that you might feel like you need to start over again and then hire someone new. That could also mean that you become jaded, right? And so those are, both of those scenarios aren't really good things. And then all of a sudden, during that time when you're in between of perhaps finding a new person, then when there's turnover, then your patients aren't being served as well, and money is not coming in aside from you seeing patients yourself. Then, right? So turnover, it can be pretty costly and not so fun to have to go through. So that's why this is important to think about, is the three keys to actually successful onboarding and an associate being happy. And one of them has to do with people. So, how are they welcomed into the team, and what is your team dynamics, and how can you really foster the relationships? Because it's interesting. I was thinking about this because I had worked for um, clinics before and in the past, and I think about, well, what was it that made me want to stay at those places? And one of was it always the money? No, it the number one reason that I chose to stay at a place was because I like the people. And so, what kind of things are you doing to really have fun together, and then have a good working relationship as a team? The second thing is the culture. So one thing that can help is, in terms of someone being sticking with you and in your practice, and really being supportive and excited about your practice, and is that sense of meaning. So they have the sense of meaning where it's beyond just, okay, I'm coming in, get a paycheck, and seeing patients, get a paycheck. That's like kind of like Maslow's lowest hierarchy of 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 meaning, of like having meaning, not necessarily having meaning, but just like basic survival needs met. But then if we really want to strive for our clinics to be a place that people would look forward to working at, like, what is that kind of culture that you instill within the practice, that they observe is the culture, the experience is the culture, and how are you providing leadership for that kind of what the culture is like in the practice? And then the third key area to success in onboarding has to do with milestones. So this is more in the way of the sense of succeeding. The sooner your new associate feels like they have a sense of doing well, and they're contributing to the practice, they're helping patients, they're feeling fulfilled, that sense of satisfaction, it is really helpful too. So how have you helped with breaking down milestones, and what are best milestones to put in place that's reasonable? And one thing I brought up earlier about the measure of success, there's the actual measure of success is in numbers, and there's also the measure of success in like what how they are being right with your patients, and that kind of thing, that isn't describable with that's not measured just by numbers. And one hot tip also, when it comes to things like milestones or numbers, it's not just about you saying to your associate, like, oh, I'd like you to be seeing X patients a week, I'd like for you to be asking for um, X number of or inspiring X number of referrals a week, or that you are having X number of average visit patient visit average number, right? Like, it's not necessarily just about you setting the guidelines and being like, this is what definition of success is. It's about how can you involve your associate to also be setting intentions and milestones, so they really feel like they're part of it, and you are collaboratively coming up with that. You're collaboratively coming up with solutions. Um, so these are some key areas that will help you with successfully onboarding an associate. The one, people feeling connected. Two, the sense of meaning and belonging with the culture. And then three, milestones that are where people feel a sense of contribution and satisfaction and a sense of succeeding as you onboard a new associate. So if you would like the, especially in like, if you would like to be having an associate onboarded well, part of it also, and having an associate stay, um, so that they're not having that you don't are not experiencing a lot of turnover. Part of it is also in the hiring side of things. How are you hiring your associate? Like, what's your screening process for that? Do you have a good screening process in place? It actually starts there, because if you hire an associate that wasn't really quite the right fit for the practice, all this work that you do to onboard someone, perhaps maybe hiring out of desperation because you really needed somebody yesterday, it may still result in as not of a good situation as you would like. So if you would like a half your hiring time free toolkit, you're welcome to go to halfyourhiringtime.com/toolkit. So halfyourhiringtime.com/toolkit. And it will give you things like if you were to do a quick phone screen interview, what would the questions be to ask? What are some interview questions that you would likely have never have asked people before or read in a book before that are really essential to ask, that comes from my years of experience? I actually have another business that in terms of that was in the recruiting world, where companies would hire us to find the right hires for them. So like, I have two businesses and that's one of them. And so this comes from that, and that experience, over 20 years of experience with it, that I am certain that many of you have never seen any of those interview questions, and that could be super beneficial. Like, and then also like reference check questions. So we've actually asked these kinds of questions of references, and they say to us, oh, wow, that's like, I've never thought about that before. That's a great question. I should be asking my people. So yeah, so you're welcome to get that toolkit. And I'm also including a free masterclass that can help you with this further too. So enjoy, have that experience of wanting to have your practice grow more, and have an associate to help you and really get to this next level in your practice where you're helping more people and having more money coming in the door, even when you're not the one seeing patients, more patients. So till next time.
Join us each week as we bring you the best in business growth, practice management, social media marketing, networking, leadership, and lots more. If it's about women in practice and business, you'll hear it here. We hope you enjoyed this week's Facebook Live event. Please like us on Facebook, comment, and share. We look forward to seeing all of you next week for another episode of Empowering Women in Chiropractic. Now, go ahead and hit the share button and tell your friends and colleagues about the show. Thank you for watching. Have a beautiful day. This has been a ChiroSecure production.